Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. I'm Theo Black,
I'm Sarah Black.
and it is now November. The last podcast we did is only going up like this weekend because I had a very busy week of work last week. Lots of work, too much work. But we are now in November, which means we've started on our Marilyn Monroe quest, adventure journey. Extravaganza. Which means that we've watched a few Marilyn Monroe movies. We're going to talk about the Asphalt Jungle to start, because I think it's her first role, or it's not her first role, but it's like
not her first role,
but one of her more noteworthy roles, I guess. I'm not sure. But we're going to talk about the Asphalt Jungle, so we're going to spoil that. We're also probably going to we might reference All About Eve, or we also watched Don't Bother to Knock, or some of our other movies. So spoilers for the Asphalt Jungles and maybe spoilers for the others. We're also going to talk about those other movies later, but just we're doing the Asphalt Jungle to start, and which is silly, cool. Which is extra silly because she's barely in this movie.
Yeah, I have my little memorial candle that has imperfection is beauty, madness is genius, and it's better to be absolutely ridiculous than absolutely boring. And who knows if she actually said that. This is a Karen candle.
Yeah.
Who knows if she actually said that. I'm very suspicious of quotes, but
yeah,
and its battery's dying, but in memory of Marilyn Monroe.
There you go.
Well, let's just talk a tiny bit, because one of the things, so we both listened to Karina Longworth's thing. I don't think we're really going to cover like Marilyn Monroe's life story very much, because that's just not our style.
And to be more specific, Karina Longworth has a podcast that some filmy people like us know about called You Must Remember This.
Non-filmy people know about it too. You call me a snob, but like, hello.
Well, no, I was just saying, I don't know how well known it is.
I hear true crime people talk about it, so.
Oh, there you go. But You Must Remember This, and specifically one episode that was done originally, but then later incorporated into a 3-episode part of the Dead Blondes series.
Right. And I don't know, do you want to, so we're going to talk about the Asphalt Jungle. We did re-listen to those Karina Longworth episodes that covered kind of this time.
The first 2 so far. We're going to get to the third one.
Covered this earlier part of Marilyn Monroe's life and career, but I was kind of curious because we did this a little with the Romero stuff. What is your history, Theo, with Marilyn Monroe?
Well, I've always, I don't know when I first heard about Marilyn, but like growing up, Madonna was kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I guess she was 90? Like for me, I feel like she was in 90s.
She started in the 80s. She was 80s, 90s.
Yeah, and she wasn't as popular in the 2000s, and these days she's unfortunately become kind of a joke, which I don't really understand. Mm-hmm. Like, I only really hear her in reference to from people on the internet, kind of not as like a joke as in like she's in a bad way, but just like she's still kind of famous, but people more reference her to make a joke about something.
Yeah.
But so it's which is weird.
This is all about Madonna, not Marilyn Monroe. But yeah,
the point of this is that Madonna had an aesthetic that came from Marilyn Monroe. And so at some point, I think in the 90s, when I was under 10, single digits, I sort of learned who Madonna was, and I sort of figured out who Monroe was because of that. And so since then, and I live in LA, so stuff just pops up about Marilyn Monroe because she might have been the most famous actress of the 1900s. I don't know. I'm not sure how we quantify these things, but she was definitely really famous in her era.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just knew her about in that way. And I hadn't really watched a lot of stuff with her in it. And then really she gets mentioned in other movies by, as in passing references, or stylistically, again, Madonna and other people reference her. So that's really all I knew about her until I listened to You Must Remember This. And, a little while ago, we watched a couple of Monroe movies, but...
Yeah, had you watched any of her before we watched those together?
Not that I can. I mean, All About Eve, which she kind of steals the scenes she's in, but she's not really in the movie much.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I
We should
mean,
make a pilgrimage to her gravesite. It's an odd time, but there probably aren't a lot of people there right now. So hey,
probably
I think
not.
she's buried in like the Westwood Cemetery or
Oh, you
something like
have
that.
not the usual cat right
No,
now.
it's a different cat.
It's a
Hi,
different.
Chip.
It's Chip. Hi, Chip. It's the sexy cat.
Yeah, well, he's here for Marilyn.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, hey, this should be Chip's
Yeah,
month. He's a lap cat right now, maybe.
it's a little cold. Anyway,
Anyways.
um,
Anyways, that's really what I knew about Marilyn. I mean, and so to sum it down, I knew she was really famous at one time. I remember reading an article probably in my teens, just something that floated around maybe on MySpace or maybe something I saw online somewhere that was basically like this restaurant changed the name of its Marilyn Monroe sandwich to something else because no one knew who she was anymore.
oh, interesting.
And so, which is, one of those things where it's like the kids don't really know, but as you get older, you maybe learn. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
That's my
people
brief
also come
knowledge.
in and out of, yeah.
What about you?
It's funny. I think the Madonna reference is pretty good. Weirdly enough, I was thinking about Pamela Anderson because she was growing up. I watched Baywatch, which is not a good show, and there was a lot of like Pamela Anderson. She's so dumb, like,
Yeah.
and she was, not a bottle blonde the way Madonna or Marilyn Monroe or any of them were, but
Right.
and I don't actually know how smart Pamela Anderson is, and I don't think her career is comparable to Marilyn Monroe's in any way, shape, or form. But there was that feeling of like, why do we put these women down that way? Like, I kind of noticed that Chip does not want my Marilyn Monroe memorial candle to be around. And she just was kind of in the zeitgeist, as they say. And yeah, I kind of struggled with like, am I supposed to dislike her because she's really stupid? And at some point I realized like, no, she was a really smart person. And
I had heard a little bit. I had, heard the sort of theory that she like was really into sex and, she was kind of a dumb blonde and she wasn't a very good actress, which now that I've learned more about her, I think is just old. I mean, it's probably not all old white men being stupid, but it's just that's where my brain went with it.
Well, I was definitely uncomfortable with that kind of a notion as a kid. Like the over sexualized human being made me uncomfortable. Man or woman, probably more so with women, but they're like, I've never really been that into rock stars because they have a very hypersexualized persona, and it's not my thing.
Yeah.
So I think I saw Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, or I saw one of those like in college, but I haven't seen all her stuff. But I was always just like, she, like Rita Hayworth, to me is just magnetic. There's something about her that like just captures my attention, and so I've always liked her for that reason.
Yeah.
And her story's tragic and tied into other tragic stories, obviously, in weird ways. Like,
well, and JFK? No, not JFK. Which president is it? Oh yeah, JFK.
Yeah, JFK. Yeah. But like, probably not really. But just the way everything kind of gets tied up, or grouped together oddly. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. No. You. It sounds like you knew a little bit more about her than I did prior to You Must Remember This, because You Must Remember This is really where I learned everything I knew about Marilyn, because she was a big blind spot in my filmography until
I definitely had I mean I have weird blind, the era of Marilyn Monroe, I'm not that I'm probably more strong on that than it's hard to say at this point. Anyway, let's get on to the Asphalt Jungle.
Well, yeah. So here's a little lead up. The first episode of the You Must Remember This is actually a lot about how Marilyn got to be in Hollywood. And at the end of that episode, I believe, or maybe at the beginning of the second episode, it talks about how there were two movies and that she had bit parts in, Asphalt Jungle and All About Eve, that were noteworthy. But the thing that probably propelled her to fame was actually these nude photos she took.
Right.
And like how she spun that, per Karina Longworth, how she spun that to sort of make her image more well-known and to sort of be the girl next door, and to we feel that weird dichotomy that women have to
Yeah.
where they're like both virginal and chaste and naive and sexual and free at the same time, you know.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about that a little in reference to what we watched.
So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there. And there's some other stuff in that episode. I'm just pushing Karina Longworth's show because it's great. There's stuff in that episode about her tragic childhood, and not tragic, but just some of the hardships
Well,
she had.
She has
And
this interesting background, like just really quickly, fatherless child. I don't think she ever knew who her father was.
yeah,
Raised in Hollywood and in love with Hollywood, by women who worked in Hollywood in very
early editing work with her mom
yeah,
had
not star level, not powerful positions.
no.
And really wanted to be a movie star. Like, and that's an interesting story because you compare that to something like Rita Hayworth, who really didn't want it,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. She has, and that's where like I feel like I got a weird, because we view people in the past differently depending on where we are in the present. And I feel like with Madonna, with Pamela Anderson, there was a real sleazy view of women at that time, like the 80s, 90s. It was like,
Yeah.
and that kind of overlaid with Marilyn Monroe in my mind, where I kind of associated her with all of that, like kind of gross, over sexualized,
Yeah, I was thinking of which is that Boonwell with the two actresses in it.
oh,
Shoot.
Tristana.
Maybe Tristana. I forget which one it is. You can look it up. But really, Monroe, to me, the way it seems like she was viewed, by biographers and these biographers that Karina Longworth talked about, and just how women are often viewed, but again, both chaste
Right.
and both, free in bed and all that. It's not from a perspective of a woman who may or may not want to be either of those things. It was viewed from the perspective of a man who wants her to be both of those things at the same time.
Right, totally. But the interesting thing to me watching these movies and thinking about that, and also having just thinking about what Karina Longworth said, Marilyn Monroe did seek certain men to try and help her career because that was what you had to do at the time. But it wasn't like there's this attitude like the women had power in those positions. Like, and it was really, yes, you had a better chance of getting somewhere if you slept with one of these men, probably, but there was no guarantees. Like,
no,
it was really kind of, and to see,
like Monroe, I think died just before women might have had some, like, she's just a little too late. Like, there's this period in the 30s and 20s where you have like Dorothy Arzner and some other women, and maybe working in Hollywood with some power, but not like a lot of power, but some power, like Alice Guy Blaché, who's even earlier. Like, that's the start of it. And then I think like late 30s, 40s, 50s, there's not, I mean, I need to do more research, but there's not a ton of women with power unless you're like as an actress,
to fluctuate in time too. Like we like to think that like progress is steady, but it really seems it goes up and down.
Well, yeah, because in the 60s, like there's, what is it? Lucille Ball, is she the one who had the TV station that turned in?
Desi Lu.
Yeah, Desi Lu,
where Star Trek started.
So like, and there were actresses who had power, and certainly Marilyn Monroe did, but like, it's still like you have to marry the right person for like a year and then take some of their money and then find a better person. And it's this weird, like we always make fun of, or we always think about how aristocracy did this at a certain, like you married off your daughter to get a certain kind of power, but this is what women were doing not even 100 years ago. Like,
well, because
I mean, even now probably.
The Boonwell you were thinking of is That Obscure Object of Desire.
Yeah, I really like that one.
That's an interesting one. Yeah. So I was thinking about that, and then watching probably more Don't Bother to Knock, which we will get to, but reflecting on Asphalt Jungle, she doesn't, I guess the sleaziness that I viewed it through, and like, I think we were thinking of these kind of women in the 80s and 90s as like, they trade sex for power. But the truth is, it's not That's not really how it works. And
it's an oversimplification.
Thinking of Asphalt Jungle, like, she is not the femme fatale. She is not. And thinking of a lot of her roles, and even we'll get to some. I won't name names, but there's something inherently sympathetic about her to me, which is interesting. Like, she doesn't come off as evil. She doesn't come off as malicious. We'll get to the gold digger type movies. But even, she's basically a kept woman in Asphalt Jungle, and she just seems like a sweet, clueless, dumb blonde, but there's nothing, I want to say avaricious. I think that might be the word I'm looking for.
Google.
But she doesn't have that, like, avaricious, like having or showing an extreme greed or wealth. Like clearly she's in Asphalt Jungle. She's with this kind of gross older man. I mean, he's not that gross. He's just an older. He's infantilizing her, and he's much older than her, and it's not not like a relationship, meeting of minds, meeting of hearts kind of a relationship.
Yeah.
But she just seems like she doesn't come off as having the power in the relationship.
No. Well, and we should, since this is ultimately also a review, I mean, we're talking a lot about Marilyn because that's what this month is about, but to cover the movie slightly, as here's what the movie is about. I guess he's a German man or German American, I'm not exactly sure. German guy gets released from prison.
We're getting in the weeds already here.
Oh, man. No, let me try again. So this guy gets released from prison, and he immediately goes to this guy who has connection, seems to be a bookie, to set up a heist.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, it's more or less a noir heist from the 50s. You gather the team, you do the heist, things fall apart. And that's the movie.
Talk in rooms endlessly.
Talking in rooms endlessly.
And our two women does not pass the Bechdel test, and our two women characters
I think it gets 1 out of 3 of the Bechdel test. I don't think two women even speak to each other in the movie. I'm not sure.
Definitely not. I mean, we have Doll and we have Marilyn, right? And there's the wife.
There's the wife.
I mean, that is what we've got here, though. Like the wife.
There's that girl who dances in the
her name is
diner later. Yes. Well, not the wife, but the wife is just the wife. You're right. Yes.
Right.
And our Dix's girl is Doll. And Dix, who seems to talk past Doll for most of the movie.
Oh my God!
They have some brief conversations where they're talking to each other, but mostly it's just Dix talking past her.
Yeah, I mean, and that Doll, for the record, is not the Marilyn.
I don't. Character. It's funny because it's kind of good that we're talking about Marilyn, because I don't actually have a ton to say about the movie itself. If you like noirs, if you like heist movies, this is a perfectly fun little movie. It's not.
It's not, though, but okay.
It's I get that you don't like it, but it's a perfectly fun, nice little movie. It's problematic in all the ways that you might think, and it's even worse. Like it's even worse about women than a lot of movies, and it's even shows its age than other movies. But I thought the machinations of giving everybody together, Dix's not exactly a character arc, but like the psychology that we give him is kind of, it's not unique, but I still enjoyed it. The heist itself was interesting, and then how everything falls apart worked for me. It doesn't really break any molds, but I felt like it hit all the points well enough. So it's kind of a standard noir heist that is enjoyable. I can't really recommend it to people who aren't like this. Again, this is for film people. This is, I don't think just the random person's going to enjoy this for any reason.
Yeah.
So like, I enjoyed it. It
put me in.
It was a fun little movie to me.
I put me in the mind of Maltese Falcon, where it's like everybody's been talking about this movie forever, and I finally watch it, and it's just people talking in rooms for a long time, and my brain started actively rejecting it. So if you're Sarah, you're not like, obviously I don't hate it. I don't think it's stupid. I don't have any huge. I'm not that into noir films and not that into heist films, and then
it doesn't have anything that like
the
that's
women, why Doll was just talked over the entire time, and then Marilyn Monroe's character, who's apparently Angela Finley, didn't have much to do in it. Honestly,
No,
I think she did what she could with what she was given. I think it felt like she was there to be salacious, honestly, like just
yeah, and it's weird
to
because
kind of
like
show what a bad guy that,
this is a
one guy
John
was.
Huston movie, and I think isn't John Huston the one who did the Maltese Falcon? Or is that a Howard Hawks? I think Maltese Falcon is John Huston. And
I'll
this
look it up.
feels look it up. And this feels lesser than the Maltese Falcon to me because there's more interesting politics in play in the
Yeah,
Maltese
apparently
Falcon.
I just hate John Huston.
Well,
Seems to be the
that's the thing.
conclusion we're
John
drawing here.
Huston, that's actually a point I'm about to make is John Huston is like a man's man. Like both
Yeah,
in when because he's come up in episodes in You Must Remember This, and
yeah.
he just he's a man's man, and I find it interesting because a part of why I find the Asphalt Jungle interesting is it's all this toxic masculinity and like there is something there about like how it's this guy Dick's trying to get back to his childhood almost, and like how he really just likes horses because they were the thing from his childhood. So there's something more to Houston than just a man's man. But like the Asphalt Jungle barely goes there. The Maltese Falcon has more interesting politics, just
I
as a
do like
comparison for like another Houston movie. And
I do
Houston,
like Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which I think doesn't really have any women in it at all.
no, but that's different because that's like here's you like it's by omission, right? You were saying I liked it. There's no women in that movie to be upset about. There's no,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's like they're not even there. And
And
like
also that's basically a horror film on some level, and that's why.
well, and I won't spoil anything, but John Huston shows up as one of the characters in Chinatown.
Yeah.
And honestly, from if you're watching that movie, I'm like, that may have just been John Huston. He may have just been that guy. I don't know.
Hard to know.
Hard to tell.
So
But
yeah, it's funny because now I mean we're talking all. I mean, there's not much to say about Marilyn. Okay, so here's what I want to say about Marilyn Monroe in it, though, and this kind of goes over the All About Eve. From what I understood from the episodes of You Must Remember This, like people want to say like, oh, John Huston and I forget who the director of All About Eve is, but like they just saw who she was and plucked her and put it in it, and that's not it. Like she just happened to be cast in those roles, and people liked her in them, and also the nude photos. But it makes me think of the story of Gary Cooper. And wasn't he in Wings?
yeah,
And he was in Wings for like a minute. And everybody like wrote in like, who is this guy? Like and it's funny. I kind of like, I've definitely felt that way about TV shows or movies where you have a side character and like, you're just like, who's that? Like, and being a kid, thankfully the internet came around by the time I was in my late teens. Then you'd go like try and find what other things they've been in and you'd hunt them down. And it makes me think of like, is that kind of what happened? Because when she's on the screen, I agree that All About Eve, she's stronger performance. She's got more interesting to say. Like,
I mean, we have barely even gotten into the fact that like in this movie she has nothing to say in Asphalt Jungle, and I don't think she does very well in it, and I think it's John Huston's fault.
Yeah.
Like, well, at least that's my guess.
I actually remember her lines because when she appeared, I was like, oh, and I paid attention for a few minutes because no one was ranting about a cult at his girlfriend who was like, I had a hard childhood, and he's like, I don't care, you stupid woman, would you please leave?
This is you're reading. You're reading so much into this. You're adding all this stuff underneath. Like
he comes with his shot friend and kicks her out of the room. Like, did that or did that not happen?
Yes, but it's not like, oh, you're a stupid woman, I fucking hate you. It's more just like, this is like, again, she's more of an accessory. This is like ignorance. Like he just isn't thinking about it. He comes
to her for help and then tells her to shut up and go away.
Oh yeah, he does do that. Yeah,
actually happen in that movie.
This is true.
So then, when Marilyn Monroe is asking her much older gross guy if he wants salted mackerel for breakfast, and then later she calls like a cop, a Mr. Banana Head or something like that, I paid attention.
Jill, my girlfriend Jill started calling me a banana head for like that evening. Because why not? I know it. And again,
he has an And she's Marilyn Monroe, though. It makes me, the other thing it made me think of, I'm just going off, is Judy Holliday. And it's like she's she acts, she totally acts, but she's also just got a certain, I guess it's a persona kind of to her. But I mean, that makes it sound like I'm saying she doesn't act. And meanwhile, it's like Tom Hanks, you know, he's almost always the good guy. He's almost always, you know, but
he's
won 3
Jimmy. He's
Oscars.
our generation's Jimmy Stewart or whatever.
Right. And for some reason, when, you know, when women do it, it's, you know, it's lesser than the fact that men all have personas too. But and that's kind of what I was going to with, she has this, yeah, it's the innocent sexuality kind of.
Yeah, one, and so my thing, because like before, you know, the only thing I had for reference as far as like 1950 Marilyn Monroe was All About Eve, because those both came out in the same year, and she just acts, it's just completely different in Gentlemen Prefer Blonde, which is the other one I've seen, I think, and How to Marry a Million. Those, like, she's already, those are years later, and she's got more of a presence. But she's just not good in the Asphalt Jungle. She doesn't have much to deliver. She really is just sort of virginal innocence in a you know, with some blonde hair. And it's like she doesn't act very good in it. But again, I mean, it just felt like John Huston was like, are there women in this scene? Oh, okay, they're fine, whatever. He was more concerned about Sterling Hayden and Dix and like that than anything else. And so it's that thing where it's like, it really feels like, having watched this in All About Eve, I mean, which we're going to talk about in a second, it's like, it really is the photos, like not, I mean, the nude scandal really made her popular, but she was also already, you know, she's been in a few parts and people like the way she looks. And then she's in all these magazines just from photos and stuff. And so it's like, really, she's getting famous off of literally the way she looks, you know, she just, more than being a presence. Like, she isn't like, I don't know, you know, who would be, you know, she isn't some young ingenue actor who's shown up in a film and given this great performance that nobody can turn their eyes from. Right. She's become popular because of how she looks and her presence.
I think I think her presence still has something, because I agree.
Yeah, I mean her presence in a photo, not more than her presence in a film.
In the Asphalt Jungle, she just doesn't have that much to do. Her lines are largely not that interesting. She's acting against this guy, and there's not much to their relationship. But there's still something about her that catches your attention. So
yeah, I mean, it's more like, in the case of the Asphalt Jungle, I can understand how people would feel that way, but watching the Asphalt Jungle, if she wasn't Marilyn Monroe, I don't know that I would remember that part. Yeah, like, she's pretty, I mean, but like,
it's hard to say.
Yeah, like I have a different thing than people. I don't like, Marilyn Monroe is beautiful, but like I don't. She's not any more or less beautiful than a number of other people. Like, I in later movies, she has a presence that I think is really something. But like in Asphalt Jungle, it didn't really work for me. But again, it's interesting to see her in that role. You know, just show up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think all we've got for early Monroe. This has turned into the Asphalt Jungle review in early Monroe, and we talk mostly about early Monroe because there just isn't a lot to the Asphalt Jungle.
It's not.
I mean, if you like heist movies, if you like noirs from this era, like, this is kind of your thing.
There's some interesting. I mean, there's some male character acting. A guy who's a dead ringer for John Waters kept distracting me. Like, you know, it's not that there's nothing in this movie.
And Sterling Hayden as Dix, I think, does an interesting job. Yeah. I think his character is genuinely interesting. Not unique. It's fairly. It's not too much deeper than skin level, but there's something there, and it's. I think I was reading on Wikipedia that it is one of these films they've thrown into the Library of Congress for being significant. And it's like, I kind of get why that is. Like, I'm glad I watched it. It's not one I'm going to personally go back to watch that often, even though I like noirs. I mean, I'm sure you won't.
No. So, I mean, I'll listen to people explain what they get from it. And
there's some other actors who show up in this. Sam Jaffe is interesting. Like, and the guy who plays, I think it's, Lewis Callahern. No. Who is it? No, Mark Lawrence, who plays Kobe or whatever. Like, he's kind of an interesting character. Like, it's not a unique role. And also, for people who like heist, it's kind of like Rafifi comes from these kind of movies, and Rafifis are really the more I think about it, the more I kind of appreciate what Rafifi was. It is like the best version of like this generation of heist movie is kind of what Rafifi is to me. So anyways, that's what I got for this.